Welcome to the Spiggle Law Firm podcast, where we help people who've been fired or afraid they might be and talk about cutting edge legal issues in the news. I'm Tom Spiggle, founder of the Spiggle Law Firm, and today I'm thrilled to have a repeat guest, one of our senior attorneys, Valerie Teachout, who is a true rock star. So much look forward to getting her perspective on some issues in employment law news. But before we get started, just a little bit of the legalese small print, right? All those darn lawyers. This is not intended to be legal advice for you, nor does it create an attorney-client relationship with our firm. If you need a lawyer or you want specific legal advice, then you got it. You should go hire a lawyer. So that said, what do we want to talk about today, Valerie?
Good morning, Tom. Today I want to talk about diverse Slate initiatives coming under fire. I want to give some historical context to this. Last summer, the Supreme Court ruled in the case called Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard that certain race-conscious admissions policies by higher education institutions such as Harvard are unconstitutional. Although that related specifically to the educational context, of course, the concern now is how does the Supreme Court's reasoning in that case impact or possibly impact employers' DEI initiatives? One of those initiatives that is fairly common are what is called diverse slate initiatives. And basically what that means is that, say for any opening, the employer says, okay, so we can interview 5 candidates, but one of those candidates has to be a woman of color, or one of those candidates has to be over the age of 40. And the reasoning behind that is to open up opportunities for people who have been historically anyway disadvantaged or not able to be as represented in the selection process.
It's a hot topic in the news these days. But anyway, what do you want to talk about with regard to those?
Well, specifically, what I thought was interesting is that on February 6th of this year, an organization called America First Legal, they sent a request to the EEOC, which of course is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, to have them investigate what is called the Rooney Rule in the NFL. And apparently the Rooney Rule in the NFL, that's their version of diverse slate initiatives. It requires that the NFL and its member leagues interview a certain number of minority or women candidates for coaching positions or for senior level front office positions. And the AFL, the America First League, is alleging that particular process violates a provision of Title VII, which pertains to applicants for employment. And much like Title VII in the for employees, applicants for employment are also protected from decisions which tend to limit or segregate certain classes of people based on their race, their gender, sexual orientation, etc. So especially with the America First League having filed this request for investigation by the EEOC in conjunction with the Supreme Court's ruling in the Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard case, I think that employers in particular need to really think about their DEI initiatives and make sure that those initiatives are not they're not discriminatory. I mean, of course, the rationale for those initiatives was to prevent discrimination, but in light of these legal events, it seems like it's flipping. I think one of my recommendations is that perhaps rather than saying, okay, for this particular position, you have to interview at least one woman of color over the age of 40. I think what's very important is for the interview panels to be diverse. One of the reasons for that is because no matter who we are, we all have what we call an unconscious bias, which is basically it's unconscious, so we're typically not aware of it, but we have certain beliefs about groups of people. whether that be people over the age of 40, people of a different color than we are, people of a different gender or sexual orientation. And I think that people, by having a diverse interview panel, that would help to equalize and mitigate that unconscious bias.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and there, not only would I think it help eliminate some of that unconscious bias that we all have, but it makes for stronger teams, right? There's been a fair amount of research done that management teams of any type make better decisions when there is a diverse group of people having inputs, all kinds of diversity, whether it be, like you said, whether it be racial diversity, gender diversity, income
Mm-hmm.
diversity, like somebody who grew up poor is going to have a different perspective than somebody who didn't.
Sure.
And, the more we can include all of those perspectives, the stronger that it will be. And I think it's a great idea. You're right, because these DEI, and just for those, I think folks know what they are, but they're diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that companies have instituted for years, but particularly in the past 10 years to address the exact problem that you had. So I think it's your good idea. Like, rather than have the emphasis be on kind of the people that are coming in, and making
Mm-hmm.
decisions that could be legally risky, right? In the name of trying to
Right.
increase diversity, diversify the panel making the decision, right? Because then they'll be making the decision. They will be less likely to make the decision on the basis of some kind of unconscious bias, and more on the merits of the candidate.
That's exactly right. Yes. And an example that I thought of is, say, uh, a woman of color over the age of 40. She's interviewing for a marketing position with the toy company, and all the individuals on the interview panel are white men under the age of 30. I mean, so their unconscious bias may be, okay, this is an older woman. She doesn't know anything about marketing. She probably doesn't even know how to open up a Facebook account. I mean, and that could be completely wrong. I mean, she could be just top
Yeah.
notch. She could be on top of social media, but by having that panel there with their unconscious bias, they will more likely than not either not interview her at all, or just not give her serious consideration. Whereas if they had another woman, whether of color or not, but someone who's older, say, hey, wait a minute, we women over the age of 40, we know a little bit, we know something about social media. Let's give her a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just from that example, they're increasingly, those of us who are over 40 are much more on social media on all types than we used to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Right.
And so I think somebody who has that perspective is going to speak to that audience better, right? Because if you've got a
Right.
business that sells any kind of product or service, unless you're like only selling it to people under 40, you want to be able to, speak to them. And so
Sure.
I think that's a great idea, and I think you alluded to something which I think is important to reinforce for folks, and that is that it has long been illegal for employers to have a quota system, right, based on a protected class.
Mm-hmm.
To say, like, okay, we need so many numbers of we're only hiring African American people for this, for this position.
Right.
That has long been illegal, but it's interesting. Like, I don't want to say it's an end run, but I think trying to, from a good place, companies are trying to make sure they get enough people, diversity, into the pipeline to begin with, using these preferential slates, which DEI programs are definitely under fire, like them or not. They are legally under fire, and we're seeing a lot more judicial activity in this area. So I think you're right to look for ways to effectuate diversity within an organization, without using some of these tools that are running afoul of, some of the legal decisions, Supreme Court decisions, and otherwise that we've seen come down.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously with these DEI initiatives, the motive is good, but it can be interpreted in ways that are not good. In other words, that are still discriminatory. And as we've talked about, there are ways to have a diversified workforce without discriminating against anyone.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And having, very clear standards which you're using to, to hire this position for, that lay out what qualifies a person for this, position. And, that doesn't completely get rid of bias, but that allows you as the employer to look at the applicants against this slate of requirements or against this slate of kind of strengths that you need for that position. And then you can hire against that. And then if you've got a diverse hiring committee, then, you're not going to solve all your problems, but you'll go a long way to, avoiding the problem where we're hiring a bunch of young white guys, because that's our unconscious bias, or
Right.
the employers are just not careful about the interview process.
That's exactly right. Right. And as long as those interview and selection criteria are applied uniformly across the entire applicant pool, the
Right.
employers won't run afoul of the of Title VII of the anti-discrimination laws.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, it's a fascinating topic. Anything else you want to add on this one before we call it a day?
No, I think that's going to do it for today, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great topic. I appreciate that, Valerie. I will let you get to the next thing on your desk.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right. If you found this episode helpful, please forward it to a friend or a family member. We're trying to help as many people as possible to know their rights at work. You can also get on our free email list if you go to thecareerrocket.io. You can enter your email there, and you will get a weekly email from us that talks about some of the cutting edge employment law issues in the news, in addition to other tips and tricks to help you keep your career on an upward trajectory, because we want to help you not only if you lose a job, but how to make the best of your efforts when you're in your job to get your career to that next level. Thanks so much, and good luck out there.